Today on the Comic Book Report, we're going to be doing an unboxing for the Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1, the 2022 reprint. But first, whether this is your first time or you're returning, my name is Dominic and you're watching the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. Today's omnibus unboxing was a much anticipated release for me. I am a huge fan of Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man, and I always wanted to read what he did creating Miles Morales, but I didn't have an opportunity before this reprint. So let's go ahead and get started with that unboxing. For today's unboxing, I went ahead and made an order through organicpricebooks.com. I had this long pre-ordered back when this was supposed to first come out, I think in June or July of 2022, but it's finally here, the end of October, early November 2022. So a bit of a delay, but I cannot complain about the quality of the shipping, handling, and the quality of the book overall. I'm very happy with it and always excited to get a package from these guys. And there's that omnibus now. I went ahead and got the standard edition cover. I believe there's a direct market variant or two for this omnibus, but personally I just like the look of the standard edition better, so that's what I went ahead and got here. Now I'll go ahead and remove it from the plastic wrap, and then I'll go ahead and start the omnibus spine stretching. Like to do this when I first get a book, kind of break in that spine. Again, I don't know how much this helps, but it seems to, and standard practice for me when I get a new book like this in the mail. As I begin the stretch work, I'm just going to go ahead and go over what this collects. This omnibus collects the Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, issues 1 through 28, issue 16.1, the Spider-Men miniseries, issue 1 through 5, Cataclysm Ultimate Spider-Man, issues 1 through 3, Ultimate Spider-Man 200, Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man, issues 1 through 12, and of course material from Ultimate Fallout, issue 4. This oversized hardcover comes in at 1,168 pages, and I'm happy to report they're a nice glossy print page. Though, like a lot of other modern Marvel omnibuses, the paper quality as far as the thickness isn't quite as thick as some of the original Marvel omnibuses from years back, but honestly, I don't have any problems with it looking through this book myself. Also happy to report, in general, it looks like they fixed the binding issue. I know an earlier printing of this very omnibus had a notorious binding flaw, but I'll go ahead and show you the binding in a minute here. Okay, and here's your quick look at the binding. You can see there's a tiny eye here. I'm hoping it opens up even more as I read through it. A little bit of gutter loss, even like this page you just saw. As they have panels across the pages, sometimes you lose some text into the gutter a little bit. But like I said, hopefully as I read it, it'll loosen up a bit more. And either way, I'm so ecstatic to have this omnibus that I can push the pages a little bit to read the odd panel here and there. No complaints on my end. And now I'll just finish up with the rest of the exterior shots of the book. I already showed you under the dust jacket and some of the binding. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and transition into the book proper. Minor spoiler alert, I will be flipping through this entire collection, so be advised that you might see images that you might not want to see depending on how you feel about spoilers. Also, between the time of this unboxing and the time of the voiceover recording I'm doing, I've read maybe a third of this omnibus, but before that I hadn't read any, so this is all newer to me, but I might discuss brief bits of the plot. I think if you don't know why Miles Morales shows up, there might be some spoilers for the end of the regular Ultimate Spider-Man run, so just be advised. Okay, jumping into the collection proper. You get so much content in this book. My understanding is this picks up right after the end of Brian Michael Bendis' first Ultimate Spider-Man run with Peter Parker, all the way up to when Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars happens. I believe that Omnibus Volume 2 all occurs when Miles is in the mainstream Marvel 616 universe. However, this whole book, as far as I can tell, is still within the Ultimate Universe, making him the new Ultimate Spider-Man, replacing Peter Parker. And here's where the light spoilers for the end of the Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man might happen. Peter Parker dies at the end of the Brian Michael Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man run. He dies sacrificing himself, trying to finish out the Green Goblin. It is just so devastating, but beautifully written. I cry every time I read that comic. I'm not going to lie to you. But this kind of picks up the legacy and the tradition of Spider-Man, this time through Miles Morales. What I really appreciated about the origin of this character is there were a lot of really reminiscent beats for fans of Peter Parker. We have this, like the other Ultimate Spider-Man, a genetically modified super spider bites him. This time he has even less context to how this happened, other than he was in his shady uncle's apartment. He starts foaming at the mouth, and then eventually he's kind of fine. He regains consciousness, but he starts exhibiting different Spider-Man-like powers. Unlike Peter Parker's Spider-Man, however, in addition to the spider-like agility, strength, wall crawling, and spider sense, Miles also seems to exhibit a kind of cloaking, camouflage, invisibility-like power, and his Venom Strike Stinger, where basically he can kind of touch you and it just kind of shocks, stings enemies. But all of this is completely new to Miles. He doesn't know what the heck is happening. He's not sure if he's a mutant. He's not sure if he's dying. And it's, a little bit before he realizes, oh, he's a Spider-Man, basically. But it's a really powerful comic. In the beginning, he's also just so terrified of anyone finding out, because this world doesn't think super highly of mutants, which he's worried he is one. But ultimately, he decides to kind of lay low, not really do much with it. And then what happens are the events of the Ultimate Spider-Man run by Brian Michael Bendis when Peter Parker falls to Green Goblin. At the time, Miles already has his powers, and he hears about what's going on in the news, and he goes to the site where Peter Parker lays dying. And he's in the crowd watching Spider-Man, speak his last words, give up his last breath, and die. And there's this stricken look on his face, and he kind of debriefs with his best friend, like, oh my gosh, like, I could have done something to stop this. I had powers. I should have been responsible here. And so what I really loved is that it kind of sets up this new Spider-Man with the same status quo of with great power comes great responsibility. But instead of having his Uncle Ben, Miles in some way actually feels responsible for Peter Parker's death, having done nothing with these powers. He rationalizes that if he would have been more outspoken about them or been trying, maybe he could have helped Peter. Maybe he could have been in the battle with him. Maybe he could have given him the edge. But he did nothing, and he had powers and could have. From that point, he also is able to debrief with Aunt May and Gwen Stacy later in the series, and it's just really powerful. In the mix of that origin as well, we have his shady uncle, who is the Ultimate Universe version of the Prowler, and we have him finding out that he's Spider-Man, and there's just so many complex dynamics there that just get even more complicated. Miles, to me, even more than Peter Parker, seems a little less savvy initially in the world of Spider-Man. He doesn't have the genius-level intellect, at least initially, to build his own web shooters. He doesn't have an easy go with that, because Miles is also in the world after Ultimatum, where the mutants have done this kind of crazy, murdering millions events, these bad mutants. So, the perception of superheroes at this time is pretty conflicted, and Miles feels thrown right into the deep end without any real context of how to just go about all this. And honestly, all of you, that's probably the most I'm going to be talking about the plot for the rest of this video. As I said, I'm still making my way through this, and it's for my first time, so I don't even have the broader scope of everything that's covered in this omnibus, but I wanted to include some of the things I read in the very first few issues here to give you kind of a sense of context for what this book is, who the main character is, just so that people that are maybe on the fence about wanting to check this out, now you maybe have a broader foundation by which to decide whether this is the book for you or not. If you want me to do a full review of this title when I complete it, let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to provide a review, but I wanted to do an unboxing and give you kind of a first look, first taste if you've never read Miles Morales' Spider-Man run. As far as the art goes, there are a couple different artists on this book, and overall, I love it. It's very stylish, very consistent, even amongst different artists at different points in the books, but I love it. The world feels very lived in, and it does feel like the same world established in the earlier Ultimate Spider-Man run. I think something that Bendis can certainly do outstandingly well is his characterizations and the world building. My favorite thing from Brian Michael Bendis is his Daredevil run, which is this kind of gritty crime noir that just perfectly executes that character, that world, those characters. And I think that second to that is the Ultimate Spider-Man run that I've already read. I know that this is also a very, very highly esteemed run, and I'm sure that it's going to follow suit for me in some of his top work that I've read. And so far, I can absolutely see that already. It is so hard to fill the shoes of a Peter Parker. It's so hard to chase after the Ultimate Comics run that was so well regarded with this new spin on it. But I think absolutely it succeeds. I think especially in hindsight. I know there was some initial controversy when this first came out and this character was first introduced, but I think that he's been absolutely accepted mainstream overall. Into the Spider-Verse was surely spectacular. I know that also introduced a whole new wave of people that are learning about Miles Morales for the first time. But I cannot believe this character already came out in 2011. It's already been 11 years since this character was introduced. I remember when this was all happening. Again, I haven't read any of this title extensively myself before this book. I've seen Miles pop up in different things. Culturally, I'm aware of him. I loved Spider-Verse. But these comics that everything was based on are the whole just next level. Miles is such a believable young kid with a very specific background, set of people around him, family life, and I think right from the beginning he just comes across as absolutely relatable. And I think with him, we also have some incredible supporting characters like his parents, his uncle, his friend Genki, and just like the greater superhero community as a whole that eventually begins to filter in. And it's just a stunning foundation to build this series. I think also having him encounter characters like Aunt May, Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, and kind of the old guard Spider-Man supporting cast was such a great way to tie the universe all together, make you feel like you're getting a lot of cohesion there, but also just really just compound the processing of the tragedy of what happened at the end of the other Bendis run, but also the paving the way for the new beginnings and the mantle passing on toward Miles. I know one collection that's in this omnibus as well, I mentioned earlier, is the Spider-Men event, Spider-Man 1, which is issues 1 through 5. This event I actually have read. This is when Miles Morales meets the main universe Spider-Man. So it's the meeting of Miles Morales and Peter Parker. Really fun little event. It's been years since I've read it, so I'm really happy to now read it again when I get to it in this omnibus with the context of everything I know now about Miles, because it was already impacting having known very little about that character. I have to say overall, this is one of my most anticipated omnibuses of the whole year. I could not wait to finally get my hands on the Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man, and I'm going to be excited for Volume 2, I can tell already. Like I said, I'm only about a third of the way through this, but it's so hard to put down. The characterization, the dialogue is all absolutely spot on. The new characters are fun, engaging, and really interesting. I find myself at a loss wondering where some of these plot lines are going to go, and I love it. I frankly love it. I think for me, reading more of these other Spider-Man characters have been a lot of fun. Earlier this year, I picked up the Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider omnibus that they released, and I'm making my way through that as well. That's another great character. Be happy to review that at some other point in the channel. But I remember when there was just really one Spider-Man. Well, actually, I remember there also being a bunch of clones and things like that. But this kind of Spider-Verse era where we have a lot more of these active Spider family kind of figures, it's a fun era to dive into. It reminds me of when I started becoming more interested in some of the Bat family over on DC. I found myself caring not just about Batman, but wow, what is Nightwing doing? What are the Robins doing? What are the Batgirls doing? What is, all of that. I find myself in a similar boat now that we're in kind of a post-Spider-Verse era. What is Ghost Spider doing? What is Miles Morales doing? What is Spider-Man 2099 doing? What a fun time to be a Spider fan. Taking a moment to talk about the actual size of this omnibus, as I mentioned earlier, it's north of 1,100 pages. That includes all the issues I mentioned, along with a handful of extras you'll see at the back of the book. And honestly, this is a great length for an omnibus for me. I know there's also like 700-ish page omnibuses that are kind of popular. Sometimes you'll get a 400 or 500 page omnibus. To me, those are just kind of too small. I mean, they are more manageable to read, but when I think omnibus, I think massive tome of a book. And while this is nowhere near as big as some of those 1,400 or 1,600 page omnibuses that they're starting to roll out, I think it's perfectly serviceable. I feel like you get such a rewarding chunk of run here. And like I said, the fact that this is punctuated between the Ultimate Universe and the 616 Miles Morales, what a great bookend. It leaves me eager to read the Volume 2, but I have a feeling I'm going to feel like, wow, this is one complete chapter coming to a close. Now let's check out what happens in the next chapter of this Ultimate Miles Morales Spider-Man. I'm very curious for fans below who have read the issues of Miles Morales contained in this omnibus and the subsequent omnibus. What are some of the highlights for you of the Miles Morales Spider-Man? What are maybe some of the detrimental or things that you don't like about this run? I'd love to hear it all, as I'm really starting to get invested in Miles Morales and some of his world and these characters. I think, again, I have the context of having read the previous Brian Michael Bendis run with Peter Parker's Ultimate Spider-Man, and I see so much here that points back to that run that makes it, in my mind, way more fulfilling reading this. I'm curious for people that maybe don't read that run, that only read Miles Morales, if you're losing out on some of the greater context. But if that was your experience, I want to hear about that in the comments below as well. Otherwise, like I said, I'm enjoying the heck out of this, and I'd be happy to provide a full review at a later date, should that be desired. And we're actually already making our way toward the end of this collection. These are some, like I said, the bonus features at the end. We get a lot of art, covers, and other miscellaneous bonus features at the end here. Love to see this in an omnibus, and like I said, this has a pretty generous amount of extras, which I always love. And that's going to do it today for our unboxing of the Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1. Thank you so much for watching The Comic Book Report. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment, and check out some of my other videos. Until next time, have a good one.